Welcome to today's podcast. We are so excited because we're talking about how to relationship like a boss in midlife. And we've got a fantastic guest on today. And we're really going to be talking about how it can be a little lonely in midlife because maybe you're at a stage where your kids need you less. And that could just be in the teen years and they're out a lot or they're with their friends are becoming more important. So you're needed less. Or maybe you're launching kids, or maybe you have launched kids and you find yourself in a different season and maybe with a little more bandwidth. But then you realize you've been so in the trenches that you've neglected some relationships. And so all of a sudden, I think a lot of times women can look up and say, where are my relationships? Or how do I dive back in to meaningful relationships now that maybe I have a little more room to do so? So today we're talking about how to build thriving relationships at this stage in life. And Billie Jauss, she is the perfect person to come on and talk about this. She is an accomplished author, speaker, and podcast host. She's dedicated to inspiring women to achieve God's best in their faith, family, and friendships. She is the host of the Family Room podcast, and she provides practical biblical guidance and motivating challenges to help women thrive. With over 30 years of marriage to Dave Jouse, a Major League Baseball coach, Billie has navigated life in 15 U.S. cities, as well as Venezuela and the Dominican Republic. So she's moved a lot and she's had to make a lot of relationships in different places and even different cultures. So this is part of why she's so passionate about this topic. Well, now they spend the baseball season on the road and the off season in Southwest Florida. And her unique experiences have given her the insights into building strong relationships. They have 3 sons, all who work in professional baseball in some capacity. So, Billie, welcome. We are so glad you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, let's just dive right in. Billie, in each season of your life personally, it sounds like you've had to cultivate relationships and that those have seen you through. I mean, I look at even how many times you've moved because of baseball and what that's required because you have to pull up and then replant all over again. So talk about that journey for you.
Yeah, every season we can be in a different place. And so we have a home base that we come home to, but I'm gone almost 8 months a year. So it's a very short window of time to cultivate relationships in each of the places I am. And then every season could be different. So I get a different group of wives and girlfriends every spring training and every season. There may be a few that filter through the same, but these are all new people we're around. And through those experiences, that's where I feel like I've learned the way to cultivate healthy relationships, even with the people I see once and may never see again, on through to the people that have my back through it all.
Can we pause there for a second? And I mean, really, this is impressive because you are a woman who's had to meet lots of people.
Yeah.
And with every person, you mentioned the person I may never see again, there is an opportunity to try to connect. And then there's also an opportunity to say, it's not worth it. I'm never going to see this person again. So can we just pause right here and say, why? Why do you make the effort to connect with someone that you may not ever see again?
John 13:34-35. It says, a new command I give to you. Jesus said this, a new command I give to you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Jesus didn't say, you can love, I want you to love this person, this person, and this person, but you don't have to love these other people. You don't have to love that group. You don't have to love that skin color. You don't have to love that person that grinds you in the wrong way. he says to love one another. And as I went through an experience of relationships and how did I form these healthy relationships within baseball, I started to realize there are really 4 types of connections that we encounter every day. And that person that you just run into and may never see again is an accidental acquaintance. Now, it may be an accidental acquaintance in the moment, but God put that person in front of you. God put you wherever you are that you're going to encounter that person. And with these 4 relationships, the 4 relationships are accidental acquaintance, social circle, kindred spirit, and forever family. The accidental acquaintances, we may think, I'm never going to see them again, so why do I need to treat them kindly? Or even, let them know that they're seen, known, and loved, because God called us to. And as believers, if we're going to be disciples of Christ, we need to show that love to everyone. My accidental acquaintances, most of the time, are Uber drivers and people I meet at the airport. I travel a ton. And so those are the 2 big categories for me for accidental acquaintance. But yesterday I had a couple of appointments around town running errands, and I started seeing the accidental acquaintances that I was encountering. One, I had to go to a medical building to drop off some paperwork. And as I was coming to the elevator, there was a woman that couldn't quite make it into the restroom with her little rolly chair. And so I went and opened the door for her and got her in. And then another woman's like, oh, is there a line? And I'm like, no, I just helped her. And those are 2 people I may never see again, but I looked them in the eye. I saw a need. I ran to help that person with that need. That person may not know I'm a believing Christian, but God had me in that moment to love them where they were with the needs that they had. Those are those moments that, rather than overlooking the people, we lean into that moment. But it's also freedom that we don't have to be transparent and vulnerable and trust the accidental acquaintance like we do our forever family. That's the freedom that I get. And people are like, do you think about your books after you write them? I live my books. I live them. And this one has been one that has helped me, in such divisive times with people that I encounter, and I encounter a lot of people as accidental acquaintances from different cultures, different beliefs, different backgrounds, different anger levels, whatever it may be. And if I go in with the root of loving them as Christ has loved me, then I'm going to love them at a level that they may not get loved. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. And one thing I like that you said that I think could really be applicable to our audience is you did an inventory of your life and said, what are the buckets of common accidental acquaintances in my life? And for you, there are Uber drivers and what did you say? Airport
people I'm traveling with in the airport, on a plane, whatever it may be. Yeah.
And so for each of us, we can look at our daily schedule and say, these tend to be my buckets. They tend to be, as a sports mom, people sitting next to me at the bleachers, or the visiting team's parents, or the fill in the blank. We all are going to have different people that are in our buckets. And I like that because it brings awareness to the front of our mind so that we can be more intentional in those moments. So thank you. Thank you for letting us pause there for a second, because I think for the person who may feel saturated with relationships, they may ask the why bother question, or if they get overwhelmed, they may ask the why bother question. And so the why behind it, which you gave us a very clear why, Jesus gave us the why. The why behind it can be the motivator to say, no, this person is worth my time because he or she is worth Christ's time.
Yeah. And I want to interject one more thing, because I heard you guys say it a little earlier about loneliness in different seasons of life. And one of the things I say to people is I've found myself lonely in a stadium of 35,000 people. You may not be lonely because you don't have people around you. That was one season of my life. Now I'm in a season of life where my 3 kids are grown adults. They have their own paycheck. They don't come home as much because of work schedule. We see each other. We call each other. They call me almost every day. I have to put everything on pause when I'm on these because somebody's going to call. But we're still in touch, but they're not around. And my husband's still traveling. I still travel a bit, but I found myself at home alone. And that was weird. That's
Mhm.
really weird. So I have to be more purposeful, no matter if it's in a stadium of 35,000 or in my home alone. If I'm not getting out of that comfort box, that place that I live feeling lonely, that's uncomfortable, but for some reason I'm staying in it comfort. If I don't get out of that and love others, I'll never know what opportunities are out there for me to find those people in my social circle who may be my kindred spirit or my forever family that draw you closer to someone so that you have that person to call when you get a bad call from the doctor's office, or you get a bad call from a kid that something's happened with them, whatever it may be. It's putting ourselves out there and not just sitting there going, okay, Lord, bring me somebody that's going to love me the way I need to be loved. God wants us to go out and love them where they are. Understanding those four relationships, I believe, gives us the freedom to see who are the people taking the steps into those deeper connections.
So, what's the difference in your categories between forever family and kindred spirit?
Okay, I'm going to go back just to give you the progression, and it doesn't always progress. There's accidental acquaintance, that person you may meet once or twice and never see again. Social circle, those are the people like the moms at your sporting events of your kids, or moms in the parent teacher group, or I was a homeschooling mom for a while, the homeschool co-op moms, your Bible study moms, the people that you're socially around more often, you probably know their names. The kindred spirit is in that social group when you meet that person and you're like, hey girl, I like you. Like there's something about you I want to get to know more. So let's go to coffee. Let's schedule a play date, just your kids and my kids. Or for me as a empty nest mom, hey, let's have coffee together. Let's do dinner. Let's go see a movie, whatever it is that we can spend some more intimate time together. And then our forever family, those are the people who go to war for you when you don't even know you're in a war. And that's one of those natural progressions from kindred spirit into this deep connection that you're like sisters. You are there for one another. Now, you may not, as you two know, you may not live in the same area. And you may have that person that you're like, that girl's got I'm calling her when I need her. And she would drop everything and come to me if she can, or if I really need her. And that may be somebody for me that lives in California or Arizona or Colorado. I have girlfriends everywhere that I've formed these special bonds with over baseball. Most are social circles, some kindred spirit, and then those select few that are my forever family. So kindred spirit to forever family, those are the ones you get connected with. But when they're forever family, they're the ones you're going to call and be like, I need you and I need you now. Be that spiritual, emotional, physical. I've got one girlfriend in Boston that I can call at the drop of a hat and say, I need prayer. And she doesn't say to me, oh, I'll pray for you. She starts, dear Lord Jesus, like she jumps in. And I know that she goes to the Lord for me, even when I don't call her. If she feels that something's, going wrong, she goes to the Lord for me. Those are those forever family. Our kindred spirits are great friends. We do a lot together. We live a lot of life together. We love each other. But that forever family are the ones that go to war for you.
How many do you think you can really have in your life of those forever family?
I honestly say 1 to 3. It's a very small number. And that's something I go into the book, like accidental acquaintances. Those could be followers on TikTok or Instagram or even Facebook. You can have people that you sort of know, but don't know, and then your social circle. So that number's infinite, right? On TikTok and Instagram, those ones are infinite. And then when you get into kindred spirits, those are the ones on Facebook that you see. Because if you aren't seeing them on Facebook, it's because you haven't been interacting with their account. So that's that. So, that social circle where you're sort of leaning into. And I'd like social media to show numbers because I think we all sort of get that. And then when you move into that kindred spirit, those are the ones you're DMing. Those are the ones you're giving some direct messages to. But your forever family are the ones you call. So that number continually goes down. Your social circle may be a few hundred, just depending on what your lifestyle's like or social media is like. And then your kindred spirits, you're going down to that core 10, 12 girls or relationships that you have that are those friendships that are connected on a deeper level. But those forever family, you're talking that 1 to 3. I think at any time, more than 2 gets murky in that deep connection. That's just the way I feel. Some people may be able to balance a lot more in their forever family, but I sort of think keeping it tight in that trust and vulnerability that you can share with them things you can't always share with kindred spirits. I had a friend that called me one time and she shared that her marriage was breaking up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I held it so dearly. I'm praying for her and all this. And then all of a sudden there are all these other people. Oh, so-and-so told me there's a problem in their marriage, problem in their, it was like gossip. So that's where you got to be careful. Who is it that you're sharing things with at that level? And I believe that forever family is that tight connection of those 1 to 2 people in your life.
I'm thinking about while you're talking how, like, what does it require to maintain that level of depth in a relationship? Because there's an investment, and I'm thinking about even the why of this episode, of women are possibly looking up for the first time in a long time and saying, where are my people?
Yeah.
Because,
I
my
did.
kids are
Yeah.
leaving, whether they're, just out because they have their own activities and they're in club sports and they're involved in school and whatever. And I'm like, where's my people?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about, what do people do? How do they start reinvesting? And what does that look like? I mean, if you're going to get to that level with someone, that's a lot of investment that has to go into that relationship.
Yeah, but you got to start with the accidental acquaintances or your social circle. You got to start small, start small, believing in the big that God desires to bring forth. I think one of the things that I went into when I looked up and all of a sudden my youngest son was at a high school. He was in college in New York City, and I was not in touch with all the moms that I had been in the trenches with for 7 years, 6 years, middle school and high school, and travel ball and all the things we did. And I looked up and I'm like, oh my gosh, where are my people? And yes, it is like starting over, but it's so worth the word you said, investment, that investment of time, of taking it slow, realizing, because I made some mistakes. I grasped onto some people thinking they were my best friends, and all of a sudden they're breaking my heart, not because of anything they really did, but they distanced themselves because I was so clingy. I was so wanting a deeper relationship, and they were not feeling that there should be a deeper friendship with us because of proximity, because of difference in life. I don't know, and it wasn't anything that was wrong. It was just, I had very desperately begun to look for friendships. And that's a wrong way to go about it. And it does take a little time. And so in stepping out, that's where I actually started working on 9 core qualities. What is it? The qualities in me that God's calling me to do in action, in a connection with people. And how do I do that without expecting anything in return other than obeying what God's calling me to do? And in that was where I started to see this growth of these different relationships. I had that relationship that, I had one relationship that was a horrible break of trust and heartbreak of a friendship that I'd had a long time. It was someone I never thought would turn their back on me, and they did. And during that, that's where I started looking at these 4 relationships. Not everybody stays forever family forever. Sometimes things happen and they go back to the accidental acquaintance or the social circle. Sometimes those are blood relatives that don't stay in that deep connection, and they go to a different level. And so
That's tough.
That's tough. It's a tough one, but it's true. And even with our kids, when I start looking at my relationship with my kids are always going to be my forever family. I've got 3 boys. They're always going to be forever family, but now they're getting into relationships that are leading to engagement, that are leading to marriage. And I've had to reevaluate that relationship in respect to their significant other, their fiance, their girlfriend. And how am I going to utilize these 9 core qualities and these 4 levels of relationships with these girls and my son and their relationship. And so that has given me, again, this freedom to be like, hey, he just started dating this girl. She might be an accidental acquaintance. I'm going to wait and see until he pulls her into a family group gathering that'll become a social circle that maybe we'll click, maybe we won't, and then head dive one of the fiance's forever family, another fiance, she's a kindred spirit working into forever family. It just a girlfriend that now is in the social circle and we really like each other, but it hasn't jumped over a hurdle yet to get to that, connecting as a kindred spirit. But it's given me freedom as a potential mother-in-law to be like, Lord, you've brought them all into our lives. Now help me utilize these 9 core qualities of loving them where they are, but not leaving them there, helping them grow also, but without dictating or being too. I can pounce at times. I've got a very exuberant, personality. And a couple of these girls don't. They're quieter. They're more laid back. They're more, worried and comparison and things like that. And I'm just like, let's go. It's, we're forever family now. And we're not yet. So having those levels, knowing that there may be potential, but it may not be. Same thing with some family members. If God's not intending our relationship to be as deep as it was for whatever reason, I have to honor that. But I still have to love them with those 9 core qualities wherever they are, wherever God's put us together.
That feels very wise. Very wise to say, as people come into your family fold, because I think that's true for a lot of our listeners, people are starting to come into the family fold, but you don't know until you know that they're there for forever.
Yeah.
How to navigate that and to have some boundaries, to use another word, to have some boundaries that kind of guide it. This gives it another paradigm to be able to say, okay, we're kind of at this level or this level, and we don't want to over jump because we might overwhelm that person or because the trust isn't there. A lot of this sounds like to me like trust, levels of trust.
It can be very much so. But when my oldest son had brought a couple of girls home as girlfriends, and one time he said to me, why are you treating them so nice? They want to come back. And I'm like, that created a boundary of don't bring them home unless they're a potential daughter-in-law to be. Not that you know that right away, but don't bring girls home that you're questioning if you're going to be dating them in a month or two. That created a boundary. That also grew trust within my son and myself as to what our relationship boundaries were. I'm going to love anybody that walks in this door with one of my sons like they are my daughter-in-law, because I never want to start off a relationship on a negative foot. Like, that's not what God's called me to do. This person's walking into a home that loves God and honors God and lives for God and serves God. And I want to show them what that looks like in real time. So you're right. It is a lot of levels of trust. However, in those accidental acquaintances and social circle, you don't have a trust level built there. It is a growth of, in those 4 relationships, as you move to kindred spirit, that trust is building. You trust, but verify, right? You trust them, but you make sure that it's trustworthy. When it's a forever family, that's when you trust without boundaries. You just trust completely. And not that you can't get your heart broken at any of these different levels, but you're opening yourself up deeper in trust as the relationships grow deeper.
Yeah. And I think I hear from a lot of women that, they thought someone was forever family. And you mentioned that. And then there's a wound that happens and they realize, oh, wow, this person isn't. And that, because I feel like the more you open your heart, because that forever family, you're wide open.
Yeah.
And so then that wound is so much deeper because you're wide open.
It is.
And that's painful. And I think a lot of people in this kind of middle season of life, they are experiencing that to some degree. or have, or know someone who has, or maybe, like you said, it's with a family member. And that's a deep pain. And so, how do you recommend that people go about risking again in relationships if they have experienced that? Because then, I mean, naturally, we're going to be a little more gun shy about doing
Right.
that again.
The number one thing I tell women when they contact me about this very thing is don't let it stop you from loving. Loving as Christ loves. It means that you're going to put them in a different category, and you may not allow them into more intimate settings of connection, of, discussions. However, you're not going to put a box around yourself where you're not allowing a wall around yourself, where you're not allowing other relationships that may be blooming over those times to continue to grow. The first thing you have to do is make sure you're not building walls because of that hurt. You have to ask for forgiveness, give forgiveness, with, whichever one you feel the Lord is asking you to do. But then you make sure that you have them categorized in those 4 relationships. Where are they now? And it's for you, not for them. It's for your protection. It's for your guidance. It's for your protection for future relationships, to be open to who is that person that God may be putting in front of you, in your doorway, in your walkway, that is someone that you can grow a much deeper relationship with. Hurt is going to happen. The Lord said that he did not take away all the pain in the world, but he's here to be with us through it, right? And so in that, when we have that hurt, evaluate yourself. That's really what started me on this long journey of these 9 core qualities, was evaluating myself. Where was it that I wasn't loving and serving others the way that I should? And in that, I found that those are asked of me. These 9 core qualities are qualities that Jesus had when he walked on earth. They are qualities that we are called to have in loving others. And therefore, I have to do that even if I don't feel like it, even if I don't want to. I still have to love, but in the level of those categories, with an accidental acquaintance, a smile, an open door, with a social circle, a prayer for someone, a topical type prayer, because you don't know the deepness of wounds. For someone that's hurt you in your social circle, being in the social circle with them and showing them respect and love and kindness, but not allowing them into that deeper part of you sharing information that you don't trust them with at that moment. Your trust with people can change at times. And when trust is broken, it's hard to get it back. But if you start at the lower levels of trusting people, that you're trusting them in your social circle, you're trusting them being in the room with you, because you know that they're not a person you're going to share these deeper levels with.
What do you do, or what do you say to someone who maybe has kids growing up and they want their children to be in the forever family category and kind of transition to that deep friendship, but maybe one of their kids doesn't want that, or is kind of maybe keeping them at I don't know, maybe a social, I don't know, wherever you would kind of put that.
Yeah.
But I hear that too from people. So what do you say to that person? Because it's their children and that
Yeah.
feels different.
And I'm going to say, Mama, my heart breaks for you, because mine was broken. My oldest son, when he left home to go to college, he goes, I hope I never see you again. And that was a bad time. It was a really bad time. He was leaning on the edge of being a prodigal, which he ended up full force in the prodigal level. And he just went out and lived his life. He wasn't in contact with me that much, and my heart broke. And in praying about it in the beginning, I did a lot of things that were wrong. I chased him. I pushed things on him. I got angry with him. I mandated things. If you don't do this, then I'm not going to do this. And it was the worst thing I could ever do. Everything I did, I felt like was based in fear. My reactions to how he treated me were all based in fear of him never being in contact with me again. And I was never going to talk to my son again. And this had nothing to do. People have often asked me, is that because of a girlfriend? Did that? No, No, it really was him, just his independence. He and I are a lot alike. So I understand him more than he likes me too, because we're so much alike. I went through a crazy prodigal 10 years. I understand. So once I took a step back and really laid my fears at the feet of the Lord and said, Lord, this is what I'm afraid of. What am I going to do? And you know how in your gut you feel the Lord go, ha ha, honey, this ain't yours. This is mine. And I was like, oh yeah, you tell me to lay things at your feet and leave them, right? Here I've been going back and picking them up, but I'm going to leave them. And I started loving my son where he was. It was sort of like an accidental acquaintance. Whenever I had contact or when he treated me mean, I'd smile and just give a word of encouragement or kindness, not even biblical at that time, because he was very angry against God at that moment. And we don't know why. It just was a stage he went through. And in that, being able to just keep my heart guarded, knowing that he wasn't my forever family at that time. He's my family. He's my blood. I gave birth to him. However, in those moments, he had to be put in the accidental acquaintance social circle. Now, back then, I didn't know that was what I was doing. Now that I have developed those 4 relationships and understand, like you said earlier, the buckets that people are in, I was able to get in the bucket with him as an accidental acquaintance. When he'd call, hello, hey, Ma, oh, hey, how are you? It's so good to hear from you. How are things going? And he would give me the shock factor at times. And I'm like, oh, sounds like your life is interesting. I kept it at a topical, how would I react to someone else's child that wanted me, give me the shock factor. I may meet this kid one time in my life. The shock factor, the meanness, how many times have we gone up to a desk at Target to check out or our grocery store and somebody's in a bad mood? How do you treat them? I choose not to treat them with returned anger and demands. I return love and kindness. And if they can't help me, I find someone else who can. So that's where I kept him. And it was heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. And the first time my son said to me, Mom, I'm praying for you about that, I almost died. Right then and there, I was going to see Jesus face to face.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I wanted to say, so who are you praying to? A tree or something, to be sassy? But I didn't. I said, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm.
And over time, those conversations got stronger and more loving and more kind. And now he and his fiance want to buy a compound so we can all live together. It's like, and he's in his mid-30s now. Oh God, he's in his mid-30s. I'm so old. But that was a 10-year period almost that I went through with him that was horrendous. And I beat myself up. I actually developed a book called Distraction Detox, Removing Emotional Barriers to Realize God's Best, because I'd gotten to such a point of beating myself up for being such a bad mom. And so that person you think is in your forever family and they're close relation, sometimes you have to release them and put them in those other buckets and respond to them the way you would those people. And it really heals you. It heals your soul. It allows you to continue to be close to Jesus, which at times I wasn't close to Jesus because still believed, but I'm like, Lord, I raised him to be better than this. He knows your word. He knows what you say. He knows how he's supposed to be living and acting. He knows he's supposed to respect his mama, And I got angry. And I had to give up those toxic thoughts to be able to love my son where he was and show him the love of Jesus without saying, this is from the Bible. This is what Jesus says. This is what you have to do. But in what we do with accidental acquaintances, unless we're on some evangelism street team, we're not walking up to people and presenting the Bible in full force to them. We're loving them where they are. I don't know if you have time for an Uber driver story. Quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
I showed up in New York City. My husband was a bench coach for the New York Mets. It was April of 2021, just at the end of COVID. And I get out of LaGuardia, call the Uber. The Uber comes. It was a Middle Eastern large man. They didn't get out of the car at that time. I had to load my own luggage, get in the car. There's a partition between the front and the back. And you could still talk to people. And I always get into Ubers. And I'm going to say this. My children think I'm going to die in an Uber because I tend to end up doing things like this. And I'm like, well, if I die for Jesus, no, check mark, I'm good with that. And if I die in an Uber, you'll find me because they track Ubers. My kids don't find that fun. So I get in the Uber and I start with normal questions. How long you been driving Uber? Do you enjoy it? Has it been lucrative for your family? You know, just questions. And I can tell within a question or two if people are just going to cut me off. And this guy didn't. He didn't cut me off. He was sort of short and firm with his answers. So then I said, well, you've lived in New York City for a while. And he said, yes. And I said, how did you fare over COVID? And this very large, burly man begins to sob. It was a cultural sob that was just added to the fact of the deep grief he had. And he said, and at that point, I'm like, I am going to die in an Uber because he's going to have a wreck. But, you know, we're on the expressway and I got to figure this out. And I'm like, do you need to pull over? And he said, no, I lost 5 people in my household in a week and a half.
Oh,
His mother, his father, his mother-in-law, his father-in-law, and his brother.
oh.
And my heart just died for him. And I said to him, I said, I don't know what you believe, but I believe in Jesus and I believe in the healing power of Jesus through our grief and our loss. I had loss during COVID too. I understand that pain. Can I pray for you? And he said, yes. And the thing of it is, people always talk about how angry people are and how mean people are to Christians. When I offer up, this is what I believe, and can I pray for you? I may have only had 1 or 2 people say no. And so here's this man that did not believe like me, did not look like me, did not speak like me, didn't have the same skin color as me. And he said, yes. So I put my hand up on the partition and I started praying with my eyes closed. And within a few sentences, there was a bam. And I thought, oh no, he's going to kill me here. I'm going to die. We hit a tree. I don't know what something's going on. He had put his hand, the back of his hand, against my palm on that partition and had left his hand up by my hand and stopped sobbing. And I finished the prayer and I asked for, the healing of Jesus to be on his heart and his mind and his spirit and for his family and all that were left behind. And I just prayed like I would anyone. And we get to this apartment that I had chosen online, like never seen it before, didn't know where I was going, knew the neighborhood, had lived in that neighborhood before when we were the Mets before that. And he pulls up in the street, he stops, he puts his mask on, he gets out, he gets my bags out, he walks me into the apartment building to make sure I'm in the right place so I'm safe. And he said, thank you very much. And he left. I never saw that Uber driver again, but I know in that moment, I loved him like Jesus loved him. I pulled him into an intimate time of prayer in the name of Jesus, because that's what I believe, not because I was trying to evangelize him but we're planting seeds, are we not? He knows why I'm acting the way I am, because of the love that Jesus has poured out on me. So
thank you for sharing that. It's really beautiful. I was thinking about this whole idea of, when you think you lack close relationships, we go into this kind of pulled back posture, this isolated posture. But what I hear you saying is that to really get out of that place, we have to go into a proactive posture. We have to embody, which we're going to talk about right now, these 9 qualities. We have to go and be these qualities to people. And that actually will get kind of the wheels turning and the momentum building for positive relationships.
yes.
So the 9 qualities are, I'm just going to read them, are selflessness, inclusion, support, peacemaking, encouragement, compassion, respect, trustworthiness, and generosity.
Yes.
So I want to talk about a couple of these because obviously they're all good. We want all of them. I don't know that we can talk about all of them. But let's camp in selflessness first, because I think this is a hard one. And can you go into how do we take our eyes off of ourselves and put them on others?
The way that I look at selflessness is seeing others' needs as more important than our wants. And I say that slow because it's seeing what breaks God's heart and allowing it to break ours. And so when we see others' needs, a lot of times we see a lot of needs in the world, right? There are a lot of needs. I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't do that. A lot of times that's because of our comfort level, where, you know, the things we don't want to step out and do. But when we start seeing others' needs in our everyday lives, in these encounters, these relational exchanges that we have each and every day, when we see others' needs as more important than what we want, that's when we begin to see what breaks the heart of God. And that's what gets us out of self-focus and more on others' focus. And that's not to take away, like, we're supposed to give up everything and be walked on like a doormat. No, that is not what God's called us to do. However, Jesus did get walked on it like a doormat. He got spit on, he got abused, he got beaten up. But I don't think we have to go to that level to show the love of Christ to others when we're being selfless. Yesterday, when I helped that woman get in that restroom with her little rolly walker seat thing, I was in a rush to get somewhere else. If I had looked at that moment, and I don't give these examples like, oh, look at me, I'm so great. No, I mess up too at times. I see things and I keep walking and then I beat myself up later. Why didn't I do that? But in that moment, if I didn't see her needs as more important than my wanting to get to my next appointment, what I had to do next in my errand list, then I would have let her struggle with that door, and that wouldn't have been what I should have done. When I had let her in the bathroom, she's like, no, you don't have to help me. You don't have to help me. I said, you know what? We don't have to do this life alone when there are people around that want to help one another. And she stopped and she looked up at me and she said, I think I need to think about that more. And I'm like, good. I'm glad. You know, selflessness. Did I want to pray with that Uber driver who was a little scary with his gruffness? No, I didn't. I wanted to sit in the back seat and not do anything.
And scroll on your phone, right? Like as so many of us do.
Me, take pictures in New York City, driving into New York City. I'm going to put this up on Instagram. I'm going to do a reel. I've got whatever. It's like, no, if I don't take that moment to see their needs more than my wants. And how do we do that? It is active. It is an active part of faith. We have to practice. We have to do it. It doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. It comes naturally more to me now than it did 2 or 3 years ago, because I've gone through this process, because I wrote it down in a book, because I'm living it out every day purposefully. When we have an intentional walk with Jesus and every day we're looking for how we can be more like him, we take ourselves out of the mirror and we turn it into a piece of glass to look through as to where the needs are. And that, it's hard to do. I'm not saying it's not easy. It doesn't just come to you all the time. Life is busy. Life is crazy. The phones, what's going on in our own head? Well, if I do that, then somebody's going to see me with a homeless dude. They're going to think this, that, or the other. Or if I don't do that, then people are going to say, ha ha, girl, good. You shouldn't have done that anyway. Whatever it is, if you're going to love someone that's broken your heart rather than retaliate, people are going to see that. With that Uber driver story, after that happened with that Uber driver, you'd be amazed at some of the people I ended up in deeper connections with because I told that story to them. How weird is this? I prayed for this Uber driver and he all of a sudden just stepped out, and then people, I want to know more about how to do that. And we'd sit and we'd talk. These were some wives, some baseball wives. We'd sit and talk at the ballpark about it, or what can we do to be more like Christ? There were a couple of girls after that study that started coming to Bible study that hadn't come to Bible study before, apparently in previous years. And I didn't do it. It's what God did through me. I allow God to use me as a vessel. I'm just a broken urn that I hope seeps out all of God and none of me, because my selfish intention is to make sure I'm comfortable and I'm happy and it's all about me. But when we look at seeing those other needs more than our wants, we allow the things that break God's heart to break ours. And we begin to look at those opportunities as being able to serve Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you frame it that way, someone else's needs over our wants, you're not saying someone else's needs over our needs. That's
No.
when we start giving up
Mm-hmm.
maybe that boundary.
Mm-hmm.
But we know automatically in that moment, like I need to get to my appointment on time. We know instinctively that's a want. If I'm 5 minutes late to the appointment, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
So we can quickly make those discerning decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. I think it's a muscle that we use. And as we practice it, it becomes easier. And it's just beautiful. I loved the Uber story. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such a great story, because in that time too, we're looking at obstacles, right?
Mm-hmm.
COVID, because you didn't know
Mm-hmm.
how people were going to react to you asking about COVID or not.
Mm-hmm.
Being in a car with someone with I had a mask on, he had a mask on, but it was still in a car. We didn't know what was going on. And then to ask a man of a culture that is not very open, in my assumption was not very open to women, and then to ask to pray for him, I was stepping out of my comfort zone and my wants a lot,
Mm-hmm.
But in that, there are just so many connections I've made with other people through that story. And then I've seen them. Oh, I had an Uber driver the other day, and I told him I'd pray for him, and I was scared to pray for him. And he asked me who I prayed to, and I told him Jesus, and he said, me too. It's like, oh, how many relational exchanges, opportunities to serve God are we missing when we stay in our needs and our wants? Now, there are boundaries on our needs. I need to be treated with respect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to allow someone to treat me disrespectfully. I don't care who you are. My husband, my children, my family, friends, accidental acquaintances, that just is a boundary I am not going to allow you to step over, because I've allowed that too many times and I end up being the rug. So you learn your boundaries, but you have to skirt the edges of those envelopes every now and then of your comfort zone, so that you can love others. And then other people see that happening, and maybe they'll love others more. Maybe they'll want to know more about Jesus. Tell me about your faith, whatever it is.
Thank you, Billie. It's great. I think people can dive into your book to learn more about the other 8 qualities that we're not going to have time to talk about today. But I love even camping in that one, because I think it really does start there.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that. And to end, I would love to just hear, do you have any recommendations for listeners on resources or podcasts or anything that you've discovered have really been a help or a guide to you in building strong relationships?
Gosh, for me, it's more of those relational exchanges, those one-on-ones. Are there places? Yes. Mindful Christianity is an Instagram account I follow, and it seems to be one that I keep going back to, because the things that they're putting out there are such loving, kind, responsive to the Spirit. And that's an Instagram account. Books, and I know it sounds so, read the Bible, but it's reading the Bible. It's making sure that you're in God's word, understanding who he is and who he's created you to be. And when you know who Christ is and who you are in him, I believe you're able to step in relationships with very good boundaries. I'm trying to think of other resources, relationships. One, I'm going to go to a marriage relationship that has been one of my husband and my go-tos for 20 years. I know it sounds like a long time, but the Alpha course based out of the UK has a marriage course. It's called the marriage course. And in that marriage course, you talk about communication and forgiveness and working with other family members. That has been, because I look back at it as my husband and I went through it when we had some marital issues about 10, 12 years into marriage. And that helped us work through that. But then when we became empty nesters and we were around each other a lot more, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this? That went back to that marriage course to be able to learn to communicate and connect on a deeper level.
I love that you said that, because I think actually that gets to some of the why behind why some women are really lonely in the midlife season. If they are married and they are lonely in their marriage, that really impacts relationships. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in mentioning that, because I think we can even start there and then move out from there.
Yeah.
After kind of that core relationship is cared for.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Billie. This has been so wonderful today. We really appreciate you coming on.
I love being with you guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.